Welcome to the Creative Tools Podcast. My name is Ashay, and I'm immensely passionate about using technology for creativity. On this podcast, I talk to various creators about what tools and technology they use to be creative. My guest today is Shane Rogers. Shane grew up in a traveling circus. After spending ages 9 to 14 flipping and tumbling across the country, he quit the circus life, picked up a guitar, and jumped right back on stage, performing with a variety of bands on the West Coast. In 2012, he was recruited into stand up by a comedy club manager and has now performed at some of America's premier venues, including the Comedy Store, Cobb's Comedy Club, the San Jose Improv, and the San Francisco Punchline. During the pandemic, he partnered with longtime friend and collaborator Duncan McKeown, and together they host the popular Midnight Facts for Insomniacs podcast. Hey Shane, thanks a lot for visiting my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let me jump right into questions. My first question is, what do you create?
So, I am a comedian and podcaster, and I'd say the most tangible thing that I create is the podcast itself. It's a podcast called Midnight Facts for Insomniacs, and I'm the co host. So, myself and another comedian have been running this show for almost 3 years now through most of the pandemic and everything. And it comes out on a weekly basis. And it's a podcast of fascinating facts. So every week we explore a different, interesting fact or theme, and that's all chosen by actually the listeners in our active Discord community. We put up polls and they vote on the topics and they suggest topics, and then I research that topic and I teach it to my cohort or my co-host and cohort Duncan. And it's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's been really blowing up. We're very lucky. We're currently in the top 2% of podcasts in America, which is huge for us. It's not as exciting as it sounds because most podcasts are in the bottom 98%, almost all the rest of them. So we're just a cut above. But we're doing around 50,000 downloads a month now, and that started from nothing. So it's been a lot of fun, and that's my day gig now.
That's unbelievable. The teaching part that you just mentioned, that with you research a topic and then you teach that to your co-host. Do you do that live on the episode?
So we do it on the episode. That is correct. He actually doesn't even know what the podcast topic is going to be for that week.
Hmm.
So he doesn't have access in our Discord community. He doesn't have access to those rooms. We've banned him from those rooms, so he's not
Okay.
allowed to go in. So he comes in completely fresh and not knowing what we're going to talk about. And that's kind of where a lot of the fun comes from because I've
Yeah,
already done a ton of research by the time we get to the actual recording. And yeah, we record it, and he learns what the topic is going to be, and then he kind of, we get his reactions live, and there's a lot of banter, and obviously we're both comedians, so I think it tends to take some humorous turns and twists and turns and tangents, and it's been a lot of fun.
that's such a great idea. I mean, I have read this somewhere and I experienced this myself, that if you want to actually learn something new, try to teach it to someone else, right? And that's exactly. And then I'm a filmmaker, so I kind of follow that in my films, where I have an idea in my head, but if I want to tell that idea or show that idea to someone else, how would I write a film about it and then present it to someone? So I very much resonate with that. Thanks a lot for that insight.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, you bet. And I think that the best teachers of anything are people who have recently learned it themselves or struggled with that in the past. It was the same for me. And like, I wasn't great at math in college, and I learned that the best math teachers were people who had struggled with the same things I'd struggled with because they knew where all of the pitfalls could be,
Yeah,
and they understood better. People who are geniuses are not great teachers typically because they don't understand how hard it is to learn the thing that they're trying to teach.
yeah, yeah. So I want to section this podcast into three parts. So I'm a filmmaker, so I think in terms of pre-production, production, post-production. So I'm going to talk about pre-creation, creation and post creation. Okay, so let me ask you a question about the pre-creation part. So when you have, how do you record the inspiration for your episodes, and how do you retrieve that inspiration when you actually want to create an episode from it? What tools
Yeah.
do you use?
So the Discord comes up with the topic suggestions, and then they vote on them, and they choose the topic for the week. And then I have usually about a week to prepare and get everything ready before the recording. And what I do is I do a lot of research online on my laptop. I don't just rely on Wikipedia. I'm very into research, so I go pretty deep, and make note of all my sources. And I dictate into my phone most of the episode. So most of the episode goes directly into the Notes app on my iPhone, and along with all my sources and links. And then I kind of organize that into a basic script for kind of what I'm going to be saying through the podcast. And then when we get to the recording time, we come in, as you can see, we can get into kind of the equipment that we use. I don't know if you want the breakdown of all of that right now, but that's the pre-process, is me doing all of the prep work and then getting here. And then during the actual recording, I literally just read my part of the script and all of my notes off of my phone. And then Duncan and I kind of bounce off that, and he has a lot to say typically.
So every week you have a poll going on in the Discord community. So it would never happen that you might get a topic to talk about and then you would not talk about it for like months. So it is usually on a weekly basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we actually have a big sort of an entire channel in Discord that has previous suggestions for topics. So there are a lot of topics in there. And what I do is I typically go through and look at the latest topic suggestions and some previous ones, and I decide which ones I might be interested in actually covering. Sometimes I'm just not feeling it for whatever reason. There's a bunch of topics that I just am not interested in. And maybe that week something interesting happened in the news that relates to one of those topics. And I'm like, oh, this would be a good time to put that in the poll. So then I create the poll of usually 4 to 5 possible topics. And we have about 500 people in the Discord all the time. They're in there chatting about the shows, and often just chatting about other things. And I'll just post the poll. They go in and vote. I give it a couple days, usually about 48 hours on that poll before I close it down. And whatever topic is winning, that's the one that I take and start to research.
So wait. So then these previously suggested topics, they are still in Discord, or you take them out and then put them in your notes app or something like that?
So they're still in Discord, and I just go through when I'm ready to create the poll. I
Right.
just go through that list of all the topic suggestions, and I'm constantly adding to it with more topics that people are suggesting. And I go through, and whichever 5 of them seem interesting, I want to make sure that whichever one they choose is one that I'm going to actually be interested in researching that week. So I choose 5 of them. I take those out. I put them in the poll in Discord, and then they vote on them. And I take the winning topic, and that's the one that I go start researching.
So is this like a private channel that you maintain for yourself of previously suggested topics?
Yeah, so the channel
Ah,
can't
okay.
be, so we actually have 3 channels. It's kind of interesting. We have in the it's suggestions and input. So that's the kind of overarching topic, and then we have
Right.
3 channels in there. And one of them is suggesting topics, so people will go in and suggest topics. One of them is the past history of topics. So it's just a list of topics, and only I can access that.
Right.
So I'll go, and any topics that they suggest that I think are interesting, I will add those into the big list of channel
Okay.
topics. And then the third channel is the vote channel, and that's the one that just has the polls.
Right. Because I mean, uh, if you had the previously suggested topics channel as an open channel, then it won't only have topics, right? People could talk about anything else. So like you
Yeah.
would, it would be hard for you to actually pick out the topic. So that's great that you are taking that and then putting into your own private channel, which is just topics. So then you have a quick access to the previously suggested topics that you found interesting.
Right, and they can see that channel, they can view that channel, but they can't add to it. So
They
they
can
can
add.
the nice thing is they can go back and see they can see if something has already been suggested, and that's a way of avoiding duplicate suggestions, because a lot of people have the same suggestion. So I wanted them to be able to see all the topics that have already been suggested, but I didn't want them to be able to go in there and mess with them or chat too much. So yeah, you're right, that's something that I ran into right away, and I was not familiar with Discord when we started the podcast at all. And in fact, we didn't start the Discord community. It was a fan who started it
Really?
and then invited us to it. And by the time we got to it, it already had, a pretty active little fan base. And so that was interesting to be kind of invited to our own fan club. That was kind of cool. And now I do have the administrative, the woman who started it is also an administrator of the Discord. But and that's another thing that I found, is that it's very useful to leverage if you have an active and very enthusiastic fan base, to kind of leverage them to do a lot of your social media. We have another fan from the Discord. She's a moderator on the Discord. She actually has access to our Instagram, and she can post on there. So she does a lot of the promotion for us, and that's taken some of the heat off me.
That's nice. Like this is first time I'm hearing that you are actually using a tool that your customer suggested for you. Like usually, you create a tool for your customer, right? But then this is something that your listener created a tool for you that you ended up using, which is very useful for you. This is great. Um, and then when you research your topic, you said you use your notes app. So in that notes app, you add voice notes as well as text notes.
No, I do dictate into the phone. So everything typically comes from my voice, because I just find that so much easier
Hmm.
than, tapping out on a phone or even typing. I'm a pretty fast typer, but I'm a much faster talker.
Hmm.
So it is easier for me to just dictate directly into the phone. And everything is just, it's just a list of notes. I'm very organized. So everything has like a heading for each section. This upcoming episode we're doing is going to be on animal attacks. It's like famous animal attacks. So I have a different section already created for, the grizzly man and the crocodile hunter, and the two guys in Vegas, Siegfried and Roy, got attacked by their tigers. And I'll go in and start filling in each of those sections as I kind of, start with the research.
So wait, so do you have a template for a note, or you start with the blank note?
I do actually have a template, because the notes are what I upload as our transcript. So we're not doing active transcripting right now at this point. So the note is the full outline of the episode,
Hmm.
and that's what I use as our transcript. So I have, in the beginning, it says, I can kind of read you the latest. It says killer beasts, notorious cases of animal attacks, and then a copyright, our podcast title, and then it says podcast transcript. Note: transcript consists of episode outline, and then at the bottom, I'll start putting in all of my sources as well, links to sources, and all of that will be uploaded at the end. So every time I start a new one, I just copy the last note, change the title, and jump right in.
Hmm. But then you are copying the last note. That means your content from the last note is also copied. So
Well,
you will.
I'm copying the template. So I
Oh,
have a
you're copying
template
the
now.
template. Oh, got it, got
Yeah.
it. Okay, so you have a and then this template that you have is since it's in the Notes app, you must have it in like a text format, right? It's not like a form where
Right.
like a Google form or something. It's a simple text template with headings. Is that correct?
Yeah, it just has headings and a footer, and I just go in and I just select all, copy, paste to a new note, and start.
Okay. And then do you refer to any completed notes at all after you have done the episode?
Refer back as in like on future episodes.
For future episodes or for any subsequent research, do you have any use case or do you have any opportunity? Do you create any opportunity to go back to your notes? The reason I'm asking is like, how do you organize these notes? Do you have tags? Do you have folders? Like, how
Yeah,
do
so
you?
I have a folder, so they're all in an episodes folder. So I use my notes app for like everything, because I also do stand-up comedy. So I have a comedy folder as well with a bunch of different notes for different joke ideas
Hmm,
and jokes that I'm working on, or jokes that I've used in the past that I don't want to forget. So I have multiple folders in my notes app, and one of them is comedy, one of them is episodes, one of them is set lists for different venues that I might do. Um, and so yeah, with the I just tag them. It's like a tag. You just go ahead and move it to that folder,
Hmm.
and so I have all of my previous episodes, all of the notes organized in that folder.
Hmm. And what about when you showed me your phone just now, I saw like couple of pictures too. Like, do you also
Yeah,
add pictures or what are those?
I do. So at the end of every episode, we go through our we do a shout out for any new patrons of our show. So
Hmm.
anytime I get an email saying that I have a new patron, I just snapshot that and put that in the notes. So we have three new patrons for this next episode so far, and we have also a review. So also any new reviews that we get on the show, I will do a shout out for those and read them out loud. So I just snapshot all of that and put it at the end of my episodes. I also have a screenshot. One of our listeners in the Discord went through all of our episodes, used an AI tool to transcribe, and then counted the number of swear words and which swear words we said a certain number of times. So we said the F word 1,961 times apparently in the last 3 years. And he gave me this, and I thought that was interesting. So I snapshotted that, put that in there, and we'll talk about it at the beginning of the next episode.
Okay. Okay. Um, Now, let's talk about the creation part. So when you are actually creating the episode. So I got a little bit of idea where you mentioned that you have written the outline in your notes app and then how you go about it. But then, do, besides those notes that you have, do you have any? I mean, do you have any storyboard or well, I make films, so that's why I'm thinking in terms of storyboarding. But um, any kind of structure or anything in your head that you want you follow for creating the episode?
I mean, the note itself is very structured. So when I come in, it already has usually an intro, and then each of the topics again with like a heading. So I know that we're going to talk about Siegfried and Roy. I know we're going to talk about Grizzly Man. We'll do those one after another. And then at the end, I have the section for new patrons and for reviews.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
already all broken up in my notes, and I just follow through the note. It's, in the beginning, we were a lot more spontaneous,
Hmm.
and it was a very chaotic time. We were recording when we started in a car because we didn't have like a studio or anywhere quiet. So we would go out into my car and we would drive somewhere, in the middle of nowhere. And me and Duncan had a little mobile recorder with two microphones, and we would record in the car and we would kind of wing it. Like I
Hmm.
had bullet points rather than anything scripted.
Hmm.
And it was fun back then, and I think a lot of people kind of liked that freewheeling style to some extent,
Hmm.
but it was really a pain in the rear to have to edit, and
That's correct.
also it just and it felt very unstructured, and I wanted there to be more. I wanted people to get more out of it, and I felt like it needed to be more structured so that I could really make sure that I was getting across all the information that I wanted to. And I tend to be very I'm very much a planner. I'm someone who is very organized, and so this is just the best system for me, is to make sure that it's all very regimented, and Duncan's a lot more kind of freewheeling and loose. So part of my job is reining him in. So I wanted to make sure that on my side of it, it was as structured as possible so that he would have some room to play without, blowing up the whole episode.
And do your episodes are your episodes connected to each other? Like, for example, do you talk about something today? Would that inspire you to talk about something else tomorrow, or they are completely different topics?
A lot of them are completely different topics, but occasionally we will do a part two. So we've done a series of cults episodes, episodes on Jim Jones or the various cults, Nexium, and so those are all sort of narratively connected with the thread of them being cults, and we'll call it cults part five Nexium or something. So those we've done. We've also done a few episodes on like serial killers, and those are connected. We've done part two. There are some episodes that are just too big. We did one on um, espionage and spying, and that was just too big of a subject to do in one
Hmm.
episode. So we
Hmm.
did one episode on the history of espionage. We did an episode on the technology of espionage, and I'm sure at some point we'll go back and do a part three on actual spies and stories of real spying. And that's something that I want to get around to eventually. But so there have been ones that have either been really popular and we realized we need to do more in that direction, or that have necessitated more just to fully cover the topic. And then some of them that I honestly just want to do more of. And every once in a while, I will hijack the show and ignore the poll and just do an episode that I want to do. This latest episode that we did was completely had nothing to do with the poll. I just saw that, I was really interested in what was going on with Twitter and Elon and everything and TikTok and China and spying. And so I decided I was going to do what I called social media meltdowns. I did the history of social media up until now, and then specifically looked at TikTok, the burnout of MySpace and Twitter. And that was something that I just wanted to do. It's a long episode. I was really into it. I was kind of reading about it. And so sometimes I just go rogue and do whatever I want. But most of the time, it just comes from which episodes seem to be most popular and what the Discord wants us to do.
Have you ever run out of ideas for episodes?
No, I've definitely run out of ideas for episodes that I wanted to do, and that's what happened most recently. Was there I was looking at the poll. I had even chosen the topics, but for that week, I just wasn't interested in them. I was
Mm,
looking at what they had come up with, and I was like, I don't want to read anything about this right now. That's just not what I'm feeling. And I was really deep into a kind of a research rabbit hole already with sort of the history of social media, and so I was like, I'm going to do a topic on this, because that's what's interesting me right now. And the Insomniacs are fine with that. Some of the most popular episodes are ones where I just go rogue and do my own thing. As long as they know, and eventually I'll get to that topic. I'm researching the animal attacks one was chosen last week. I ended up doing social media instead, but
mm,
now I'm doing the animal attacks, and I'm excited about it. It'll be fun as I get into it. It's more and more fun. But it was just at the time I wasn't feeling it, so I did something else.
mm. And then now let's talk a little bit about the technical part of your creation. So you record the episode, which is your key audio, let's say, where you and your co-host are talking with each other. Um, do you end up editing this at all, or
Yeah.
it's one single audio file?
No, I do a good amount of editing. It's a pretty involved process for me, and I know that some podcasts really want to be spontaneous and just put out the whole episode the way it is. I think most of those podcasts, if you're not Joe Rogan or something, interview podcasts I think are a little different with
Mm,
what you're doing. Interview podcasts, you typically want to keep as much as you can because you really don't want someone taken out of context, or you don't want to lose the overarching narrative thread of the conversation. But for what I'm doing specifically, it's an entertainment podcast. We want to teach people and we want them to laugh along with
mm,
us. And so I'm very careful about going through and making it kind of a seamless experience. And also, there are just a lot of things that happen when you have, a co host, especially a co host like mine. I love Duncan, but, he is a loose cannon. And there are things he says that sometimes I want to take out. There are sometimes things I say that I want to take out. We also have, we do have a studio now, which is nice, but there are at least once or twice an episode we've got a siren goes by or some loud noise outside. He gets a phone call. He's on call at work, and if he gets a phone call he has to answer it, regardless of whether we're in the middle of an episode or not. So I might have to cut out a whole phone conversation that he's having. So every episode requires a good amount of editing. I try to keep a lot of it in there. I don't want it to feel some of the episodes I think in the beginning were over edited and felt a little breathless.
mm,
You want
mm,
the episode to breathe a little bit. You want there
mm,
to be a very natural flow of conversation, but I don't want it to be, I do want it to be hyper real. I want it to be funnier than what you would expect, and a little bit more witty and snappy than you would than you would hear maybe on the radio or something. And so I'm very careful with the editing and very particular with the editing. And I think that's been one of the reasons for our success is that it's a show that just doesn't disappoint, because if there's anything in it that's not good, I'm going to take it out.
mm, mm. So I'm very fascinated by audio editing, by the way, because audio is something that you can't see, you can hear. So in films, when I'm editing films, I can see the shot. So then I know whether I need this frame or I don't need this frame. But for audio, it's very kind of like a linear process where you need to find what you want to keep or what you want to remove. So what do you use for editing? How do you edit your episode?
I use Logic Pro. I've used a few different DAWs, digital audio workstations. I think the best are like Reaper, Logic. There's some really good ones. Logic is, I think, a very useful tool. It's very intuitive in a lot of ways, which I found. Reaper to me is probably the best, and especially considering it's very affordable. Editing software, especially for music, because I was in bands for many years. Duncan and I, the way that we know each other is that we've been in bands together since high school.
Hmm.
He's a great singer, and I play guitar. And a lot of the equipment that we started with was all music equipment because I had a ton of different microphones. And so, I've experimented with all kinds of different DAWs and editing software, and was very familiar with audio editing before I came in
Hmm.
to this industry. And for me, Logic has been the best. I do use another tool to kind of augment Logic, and we can get into that. It's called the Better Touch tool, and that just streamlines the process for me. But yeah, that's what I've been using, and I just find it very intuitive and very easy to manipulate the files.
I hadn't heard about Better Touch. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so what I love about it is in what I end up doing a lot is I just listen to you mentioned that the audio is just kind of a linear file, and I just listen from the beginning, and as I come to areas that I need to cut out, and that's typically what I'm doing is cutting something out and then rejoining the two
Hmm.
the two portions of the audio track, and I want that to be seamless. So what I'm usually doing a lot of is stopping, cutting, selecting everything ahead, cutting something out, and then
M-
selecting everything again and moving it all
Moving,
over,
yeah.
rejoining the files.
Right.
And so Better Touch maps multiple keystrokes to one tap on the trackpad. So, for instance, the top left trackpad corner of my trackpad, if I tap that, it's undo. So, and then the bottom is select and the bottom right is cut. So I can easily just tap on my trackpad. The top right is select everything from this point, from the cursor point on. So if I'm doing an edit, I just tap bottom and then I tap the right and then I tap the top and then I drag. And it's made it so much easier instead of having to do like Control T, select everything with the mouse, drag everything over. I just do tap, 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 drag, and I'm done.
So wait, so this is a like an add-on for like your trackpad, which is like this, like trackpad?
So it's actually the trackpad in my laptop, and it's just a program that I downloaded, and yeah, it maps those keys for whichever app you're using. So you can assign it to an app. So you download
Hmm.
Better Touch tool, and then you assign it to that app. You say, I want for Logic, for this app Logic, I want when I'm in that app and that app is active, when I tap these areas of my trackpad, it
Hmm.
does this functionality and with multiple keystrokes. So, control or option T is to cut, and I do that all the time. And now I just tap the bottom right, and that's option T automatically.
So does it have like default things, or you can customize these things, like which area?
I don't think it has it has some I believe it has some default keystrokes that you can probably map in there, but nothing like specific to Logic. It's not built for a certain app. So I did do you do have to set it up. You go in and you basically do it's almost like recording a set of keystrokes. So you basically
Yeah,
hit,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
don't remember exactly how it worked, but it's similar to like Photoshop. You can do that where you automate a bunch of tasks. So you'll
Right.
hit record essentially, and then you do the task that you do the keystrokes that you want it to record, and then you say stop, and it goes, okay, where do you want that put? And you put that on the bottom right of your trackpad. And when you hit it, it just replays that functionality and it does that thing.
No, but how does it understand which track you are working with? I mean, it's
Which
not.
track you're working?
Yeah, like for example, the recording thing that you just mentioned, uh, that the thing that I'm interacting with the cursor has to be exactly in the same spot all the time for that recording to work. Uh,
So you
go,
still do have to do some. I mean, it doesn't replace the need to go and place your cursor. Like you still have to place your cursor where you want it. You still have to do some dragging. It's not a it's not a tool that now all I have to do is tap on my computer and it does everything. It just streamlines everything. So if I'm, let's say I have to cut out, Duncan had a coughing fit. Let's say he took a drink of water and he coughed, and I need
Hmm.
to take that out of the episode. I just go to that spot. I hit my my space bar to stop. I just hit the bottom to cut right
Hmm.
there, and then I hit the bottom right to choose everything else that's ahead of that section, and then I just drag it manually with the trackpad
Okay,
over
okay, okay,
that spot. So
okay,
it's
okay,
still
okay.
there's still plenty of manual. I wish there were automatic tools that would do more for me, and maybe they will in the future. But right now, it just makes it easier. Instead of having to do Control T, Control A,
Yeah, yeah.
it just so much easier to just tap tap and move.
Okay, okay. And this is for your episode audio. Do you have any in your final episode file? Do you have anything that is common across all episodes, like intro and outro?
Yeah, so I have a template file for Logic as well. So for
Okay,
Logic, I have two different templates. If we're doing a Patreon episode, we have a different intro. So in my computer, I have a folder that says templates, and I'll go in there and I'll just duplicate my template and I'll pull it over into its own folder, and I open that up and it already has the intro prepared. There's a little spot, you can put in kind of bookmarks in Logic, and there's a little spot that says recording starts here, and I just set the cursor there, and then when we're ready to record on on a recording device, we just hit record, and it immediately starts from the end of our
hmm.
intro. And so yeah, I don't have to go back and recreate the wheel each time. I'm basically just pasting the new audio into that template.
So wait, so you are recording directly into Logic?
We are recording through, so we record into the Rodecaster Pro 2. You can see it back here. So the microphones are connected to the Rodecaster Pro. The Rodecaster also records the audio as well, so that we have a backup.
Okay.
And then from the Rodecaster, it goes out to the laptop, which has Logic on it. And then we're recording, direct with, I guess, one intermediary. And the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rodecaster also adds some effects, so that I have to I like Logic has a lot of great plugins. They're awesome with their effects, but I actually really enjoy the Rodecaster effects as well. So I've actually been kind of using those and putting those in, so that the Rodecaster adds some denoising, it adds some compression, and some de-essing, some other stuff.
So, so basically, the end result is you are recording directly in your editing software.
Ideally, we are. Now, there have been times when something got corrupted and I had to go back and get the audio out of the Rodecaster Pro
Roadcaster, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
put it there. So we are ideally we are recording directly into the Logic software, and then I can start editing right away.
Right.
Worst case scenario, we have the backup and we can get the audio out.
Okay. So now the tail end part of the creation. So let's talk about that quickly and then go to the post creation part. So now your episode is ready in Logic. What do you do after that?
So once it's fully ready, then I export it and I upload it to our hosting service. Two different services. So it's a little bit complicated because we have one version of the episode that we do for Patreon, and we have one episode of the version of or one version of the episode that we do for our regular feed. And the Patreon episode doesn't have any ads or promos. And so I export from the regular feed episode. I upload that to our hosting service, and then I export from the Patreon version and I upload that to Patreon. And then I schedule those. Both of those have scheduling functionality, so I can tell it when I want it to go out. And then I just sit back, and after that, they publish automatically to all of
Wait, so
the podcasting apps.
but you don't only upload the file because you have to upload the file, you have to write the episode title, you have to write the metadata for the episode, you have to maybe have to create the image for the episode. I don't know. So do you do all of that
Yeah.
too?
Yeah, and I've actually been using some great AI tools to create episode art now, which is awesome because then you don't have to worry about trademarking or copyright.
Hmm.
So yeah, I use various versions of the DALL dash
Yeah,
E DALL-E
Dali. Yeah.
um, AI tool. And so yeah, and then beyond that, I mean, I'm also creating. I typically use whatever my cover art was, I'll use that as some type of, I'll take that into Canva and I'll create some type of little video with it, and put that on our Instagram as well. So yeah, you're right. There is a lot more that goes into it. As far as just the episode, I'm done with it. But there is at that point then
I know.
all of the extras that you all of the extras that you have to do.
Do you also publish on YouTube or no?
We don't. Duncan kind of wants to do that. We do publish on YouTube every other week just for patrons because we live stream our Patreon episodes. And so we'll have a few, we'll have an audience for that. And then we go ahead and publish that to YouTube just as an unlisted link, and we send out the link to our patrons so that they, if they didn't get a chance to watch it live, that they can watch it later.
When you
But
say
that's only every
patrons,
other week.
when you say patrons, what do you mean exactly? Who are
So
these?
we have an account with Patreon, which is where people can, they can basically become members of our community, and they pay for that. So it's
Oh, okay.
$3, $5, or $10 a month. So the patrons are all of our people who are paying to hear the podcast, and they have access to extra episodes and full length episodes, and also episodes without any
So
ads.
so Patreon is kind of like a subscription service for podcasters. Is that it?
Yeah, well, it's for kind of anything. Patreon is a great tool to use if you're an artist, if you're a content creator of any type. People can
Ah,
just basically sign up to support you.
oh,
And
that's
every month it
nice.
deducts a certain amount, and then you can offer rewards if you would like, and you can have different tiers. So you can say, anyone who pays $3 a month gets these rewards. Anyone who pays $5 a month also gets some extra rewards. Maybe they get some extra merchandise or they get a shout out on the show. Anyone who pays $10 a month gets even more rewards. So you can make it worth their time, or they can just do it because they just want to support you.
So Patreon has hosting service too for podcasters?
Patreon does, yeah. You have to upload your episodes there, and then they also have video. You can also upload video now,
Okay.
and they have a link that they actually give you, which you can put into most podcast players so that you can access it there. So you can have, for instance, on my phone, I have our regular feed, which is Midnight Facts for Insomniacs, and then I have another show called After Midnight, and that's the Patreon feed, and that's all of the shows that are just for patrons and the regular ones. And so if you're a patron, you can just put that link into Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, not Spotify. Weirdly enough, Spotify doesn't support it. But and so they can just access everything there with all the other podcasts that they listen
But
to.
how
So it's really
are
convenient.
you? So then, do you mean you have two podcasts? One with uh, your ads and sponsors, and other one is for your patrons?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, it's technically just one podcast because a lot of what we
Yeah,
put
yeah, yeah.
out is basically the same, but they're two different versions, and one of them has a lot more, and those are for the patrons. So yeah, I'm basically creating two separate versions and uploading to two
So
different
then,
platforms.
your feed for your patrons, but that must be restricted, right? Like patrons have to s- go through some kind of service or subscription to access that feed. Am I correct?
Correct. So they sign up on patreon.com. We have a link
Okay,
to
okay.
it in our podcast show notes and all over the place. And they go there, they sign up, they put in a credit card, and then they get a link that they can either listen on Patreon, or they can paste that into Apple Podcasts, and then they would have the feed in there.
Oh, okay. I'm not understanding how the other thing that you just mentioned works. Like they will get a link that they can paste somewhere and then still listen in Apple Podcast app. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. So Apple Podcasts has, you can either search for podcasts, or
Yeah.
you can actually put in a URL. There's a way, I think, if you tap on the three little dots at the top, it says like
Oh.
add URL. You put in that link, and then it adds it as a feed. You're automatically following that show. And then if they were to stop subscribing to Patreon, Patreon would would basically invalidate that particular link because they get a specific private link for
Hmm.
just that
Hmm.
patron.
Hmm. Hmm. Great. Shane, we can keep talking and talking, but this was great episode. Thanks a lot for your time. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a good time. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you are a creator, I would love to talk with you. Please connect with me through my website or social media. See you in the next episode.